Welcome back. In this particular session, we will discuss about the stored procedures. Let's take an example where you have an application 1 and application 2 and application 3. And all these applications are interacting with one single database. And each application might have the same functionality in the nature or might be using same queries for some of the use cases. It may not be 100%, but for some use cases. Let's consider you have a complex queries in the database, right? So all these complex queries you have to maintain it application 1 and application 2 and application 3, and each application has to send their particular query into the database. So in this specific scenario, managing of queries at each application level becomes too complex for us. So in that case, why can't we give that ownership to something else which takes care of handling the complex queries or handling the security or handling any of the database specific things and working on that. So if you do in such a way that, so instead of each application is having their own SQL queries, those application specific those queries can be kept into a single place, and that single place will be start interacting with the database. Moreover, this single place and database will be in the same place. So the position that we are calling is actually the stored procedures. Stored procedures are actually helpful for us to maintain the logic on the centralized location within the database server. So in a short form, a stored procedure in MySQL is a set of SQL statements that can be stored in the database and executed later. Stored procedures helps to encapsulate a sequence of SQL statements into a reusable routine. The common syntax for stored procedures is like you will be having a delimiter and you will be having create procedure, the procedure name, in this case get all records, and you will have a begin and end. In between begin and end, you will be mentioning your SQL queries that you want to handle, and at the end you will be ending the delimiter. So delimiter you started here and delimiter you ended here, and that's the end of stored procedure. So once you create this stored procedure for the first time, this stored procedure will be stored into the database and it will be helpful for you to access from the multiple applications. And at the same time, stored procedures, as they are storing in the database server, they are pre-compiled and will give the better performance for our use case. To call the stored procedure, you can use call and the stored procedure name. This will give the output of the stored procedures that is written for you. When we are learning about the stored procedures, it's mandatory to learn about delimiter. Delimiter is a very specific scenario. If you regularly see the SQL statements are being separated on the SQL developer tools with a semicolon. But in the stored procedure, if you give this semicolon as a delimiter, then the MySQL servers will not understand when the stored procedure is started or when the stored procedure is ended. So for that reason, we have to have our own unique delimiter that we have to apply and in the starting of the stored procedure. So which means delimiter you are defining as a 2// and then you are creating the procedure and completing the procedure and ending the procedure, and after that you are ending the delimiter as well. With that what will happen is so MySQL will understand the delimiter is from here till here is a one single query. Once this operation is complete, then we are delimiter again replacing back to semicolon. So what that means, the semicolon delimiter whatever we have, so that delimiter will be used as next queries that is being executed. Delimiter plays a major role when you are writing the stored procedures, and you need to be more careful to use the right delimiter for your use case. Delimiters can be forward slashes, or if you want to use dollar dollar, yes, you can use. But when you use the delimiter, you don't forget to replace the delimiter at the end of the statement, right? With that said, you know like how to create a stored procedure and how to use the delimiter and what is a stored procedure. So basically there are several advantages that you have for the stored procedures and also have the disadvantages. Some of the advantages that I would say, as the stored procedures are inside the database server, they give the better performance while executing the queries. And as they are in the inside the database, you have less network usage. For example, you have a query 1 and query 2. When you are not using the stored procedure, your application might be calling the query 1 via the network and getting the output of the output for that query 1, and using that output and calling the query 2 to the database, and there would be two network calls that are being happening. In the same way, if you use the stored procedures, the two queries can be placed into a single stored procedure and avoid the network usage. Stored procedures will provide the enhanced security and also provide the code reusability. So the security in the perspective, the queries are actually in the database server. They can be more secure, and you can apply the security features specific to the database within the stored procedure logics as well. And as they are in the database server, multiple applications, if you want to consume, you can definitely use a single stored procedure for the multiple applications as well. And it will be maintenance easy because it's all the stored procedures are one place. In future, if you want to know like what are the SQL queries that you have for your applications, that you can easily figure out when you go into the database server. So the maintenance will be easy with these stored procedures. And transaction management can be achieved within the stored procedures. So transactions are mere like you might want to update table 1 and table 2 and table 3. So table 3 has to be updated, only table 1 and table 2 be successful, right? So when we discuss about the transaction management in upcoming sessions, we'll have the detailed discussion, but stored procedures would really help for the better transaction management. So as these stored procedures are in a single place, they normally you have the centralized logic as well, and which will also reduce the data transfer for our use case. But at the same time, along with the advantages for the stored procedures, you also have several disadvantages. So stored procedures brings the platform dependency. I mean to say, if you develop your stored procedure in MySQL database, in future you are migrating to the Postgres database, all the stored procedures in MySQL has to be rewrite in the Postgres database, right? So and as these stored procedures are in the database server, it brings a little bit debugging complexity for us. So we should be more experienced with the stored procedures to debug and figure out the issue in case of any issues. So as they are single source in the database, so it would be very hard to maintain the versioning for those stored procedures within the database, but you have to use external versioning for your stored procedures within your Git repos or whatever the code repositories that you are using. So basically source control also, it's a little bit difficult because it is within the database, and basically it is also brings the learning curve, and some of the security risks that we have. For example, you develop the stored procedure, whoever has the database access for that application, they can go and see the logic that you have in the database or in your stored procedures. So in summary, stored procedures offer several advantages in terms of performance, security and maintainability. So but they also come with the challenges related to the platform dependency, debugging complexity and code portability. So particularly the decision to use the stored procedures should be based on the specific requirements and considerations of the applications and its architecture. So technically you cannot use the stored procedure for all the use cases that you have, but you have to make a decision whether you really need the stored procedure for your application or for uh, the queries that you are writing or the transaction management that you are doing in your particular application. So in my personal opinion, the stored procedures used to use in the olden days very well, but due to the platform dependency and the nature of changes that we are technology changes that we are getting over the years, and applications are frequently getting migrated from one technology to the other technology, and the platform dependency is bringing a lot of complexity of managing the stored procedures. So in the microservices architecture, each independent application uses the single database. So normally in microservices architecture, there won't be many applications would be sharing the same database. So with that reason, when we are decoupling the database and keeping a single database for each application, it's a better not to go for stored procedures because it brings the complexity of the platform dependency for future migrations. But if you have a lengthy application, the legacy applications with a web architecture, web app architecture, so those applications can be considered for the stored procedure implementations based on your application need. If you have an application where you have hundreds of queries, all hundreds of queries cannot be in the stored procedure because some of the queries they might be lightweight. Those queries, instead of keeping a platform dependency, you can still call the SQL queries directly from your code. But if you have the complex queries, those can be kept into the stored procedures. So in a summary, you have to make a decision what queries has to go into the stored procedures or what queries can be directly consumed from your application based on your application need. With that said, we will stop with the theory here and we will look into the creating of the stored procedure in a hands-on exercise in the upcoming session. Thank you for watching.